Hi everyone! Today we are going to spend a little bit of time reviewing paragraph structure. Paragraphs are a very important part of writing any piece of writing because they're really the kind of units that hold everything together and give your larger purpose of your essay clear meaning. So what I mean by that is if you have unclear, unfocused paragraphs, it's hard for your readers to understand how everything goes together and how it connects to your thesis statement or the purpose of your essay. So paragraphs are really kind of the building blocks of strong essays. So I particularly like this quote by Stephen King. Words create sentences, sentences create paragraphs, sometimes paragraphs quicken and begin to breathe. I think that really just kind of points to the idea that you can have individual sentences and you have individual paragraphs, but when things start working together, it really brings your essay and your writing to life. And if you have really nice, focused, concise paragraphs, it can have a really important effect on your readers. Sorry. So, the qualities of strong paragraphs. I find it easiest to think about the qualities of strong paragraphs by referring to the 4 F's. We've got flow, focus, form, and function. I'm trying to combine my words here. And we're going to talk a little bit about each of these F's, and then we'll look at a sample paragraph that shows how paragraphs have flow, focus, form, and function. So the first F is flow. So this means how each sentence follows the one before it. It seems very simple on its face, but when we're thinking about a complex essay, maybe an essay of 2,000 words or so, making sure that each of the sentences follows the one before it gets a bit tricky. So it's important that we spend some time breaking down our paragraphs into sentences and looking at those sentences and seeing how they work together. So here are some questions that you can ask yourself when you're looking at the flow of your paragraph. Is each sentence connected to the same topic? Does each sentence connect to the one before and after it? If you have sentences that are about different topics in the same paragraph, take them out and create new paragraphs. So this really requires you to go in with a fine-tooth comb after you've drafted your essay and you have all of the paragraphs together and look at how they fit together. So if I'm talking about peanut butter and jelly sandwiches in one paragraph and I'm talking about different kinds of nut butters you can use on a sandwich, and then all of a sudden in the middle of that paragraph I have a sentence about jam. The sentence about jam probably doesn't fit there and needs to be its own paragraph because it's about a different topic. So focus is how the paragraph revolves around a single main idea. Notice that flow and focus are connected to each other. How does the paragraph have just one main idea? If you notice multiple ideas in a paragraph, make each unique idea its own paragraph and add support. So kind of going back to my example from just a couple seconds ago about the peanut butter and jelly sandwich essay. If you are in a paragraph and you're talking about let's say the health benefits of peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, and then all of a sudden in that paragraph, I have a sentence about people who don't like peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. Well, that's a completely different topic, so it disrupts the focus of my paragraph, which tells me I need to start a new paragraph. Form is how paragraphs with different functions will be organized. So this requires us to think about what is the purpose of this paragraph, what is it doing in this essay, and how does it fit together with the other paragraphs. So a basic paragraph structure typically consists of at least 5 sentences. The topic sentence, 2 to 3 supporting sentences, and a concluding/transition sentence. However, depending upon the purpose of the paragraph, there may be different kinds of forms. A support paragraph, for example, if we're writing an argumentative essay and we're providing evidence to support our claims, a support paragraph usually opens with a claim, then provides evidence and analysis of the claim. So that's predominantly the kind of support paragraphs we'll be looking at in our essays. So I have a particular formula that I think is helpful for us to utilize. I call this piece paragraphs. And I think I stole this from a student, mentioned it last semester or a couple of semesters ago, and it just stuck really well because it's such a great acronym, and we can look at this formula and use it in each of our paragraphs and make sure that we have all of the different components, and it's a really handy little tip that you can utilize. So piece paragraphs should be the form of your support and body paragraphs. So piece is an acronym that stands for point, I is introduce, E is evidence, C is citation, and E is explain. So the point in a piece paragraph is our topic sentence. Our topic sentence is where we tell our readers, hey, this is what I'm going to be talking about in this paragraph. It's usually just a quick sentence that explains what the topic of your paragraph is. The I is where we introduce our evidence. So here we've been working with signal phrases all semester. So according to Dr. Smith, blah, 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 blah. We know that there are a variety of ways you can introduce quotes in your paragraphs, and we're going to talk about a little bit about that a little bit later in this lecture. E is the evidence. So this would be a quote, a paraphrase, or a summary from the source material you're using. So let's say you're writing about literature. If you wanted to make the argument that a specific piece of literature should be included in a particular class, you could choose a quote from that piece of literature that discusses the theme you're talking about to provide evidence that this is a good piece of literature to include in the class. C, of course, is the citation. So we've worked with citations a little bit, and we'll review that in a couple of weeks. And then E is the explanation. So this is where you connect your paragraph to your thesis statement. So something like this information shows that this text should be included in English 102 because blah, 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 blah. This is a really important part, the explanation, and it's one that gets overlooked a lot. You want to be sure that you have the explanation, because if you don't have that, that means that your readers are making that conclusion for themselves, and that's not what you want. You're trying to convince your readers to believe or understand a particular thing about a subject you're writing about. So if you don't explain to them how all of the information connects to each other, it just falls a little bit flat. So here we have an example of a pretty strong piece paragraph. This is about the death penalty. As a matter of fact, the death penalty has already been abolished in many states. Recently, a national organization conducted a survey to determine which states still use the death penalty. According to the National Coalition to Abolish the Death Penalty, quote, 18 states do not have the death penalty. National Coalition to Abolish the Death Penalty 2. This statistic shows that many states have recognized that there are other, better methods of dealing with heinous crimes than the death sentence. Other states should follow this example and abolish their death penalties as well. So let's break this down into the piece paragraph formula. So the P here, what is the point of this paragraph? The point of this paragraph is that the death penalty has been abolished in many states, and information about conducting a survey to determine which states use the death penalty. So we know we're talking about the death penalty and how it's been, how many states have gotten rid of it. So introduce. According to the National Coalition to Abolish the Death Penalty, that's the introduction. We've got our evidence, which is a direct quotation here, and then we have our citation. This looks like a website, maybe. Well, maybe not a website because it has a page number. So this is the title, because there was no author, of the report that this person looked at. Then, we've got the explanation. So this statistic shows that many states have recognized this, that there are other better ways of dealing with heinous crimes than the death sentences. And then this connects to our thesis statement. Other states should follow this example and abolish their death penalties as well. So we know that in this essay, this person is making the argument that the death penalty should be abolished. This paragraph is very focused. It is, it's got the first three F's, right? We know its form. It's a support paragraph. It's focused. It's revolving around one main idea, and it flows. Each sentence is connected to the one before it. So this is a really good example of the piece paragraph utilizing the 4 F's. In a very clear, concise way. So the last F we've got is the function, how the paragraph works in the essay. So each paragraph has a job in an essay. Knowing what the job of the paragraph is will help you ensure you're communicating clearly. And this is where we get into thinking a little bit more about the structure of our entire essay, which we're going to talk more in depth about next week. But when we're looking at function, here's a brief overview. So the introductory paragraph or paragraphs are used to introduce a context and posit a thesis statement. So that's usually our first paragraph. Sometimes it's our first 2 paragraphs, depending upon the length of the piece we're working on. Then we probably have a background or key term paragraph. Usually it supplies background information and defines key terms and concepts. This is important for our readers because we have been studying this, whatever topic it is that we're talking about, for quite some time, and we know a lot about it, but our readers may not, so we need to give them the context to understand what we're discussing. The third paragraph is the counterargument paragraph. So this is where we talk about the arguments of those who might disagree with the thesis statement. This is a really important part of our essays because we want to show that we've considered all of the sides of an argument to show that we're not being biased and only giving information that we agree with. It also helps our readers to see why the other side is incorrect, which leads them to believe what you're saying. Next, we have the support paragraphs. This is going to be the body of your essay. This is the biggest part of your essay because it provides support for the claim your thesis statement's making. So in a paragraph, let's say about why a particular theme should be covered in English 102, our support paragraphs would be where we looked at examples of different pieces of literature and made the argument that those should be included in English 102 by providing specific evidence from the pieces of literature. The last paragraph is the conclusion, which is really important because this is where we sum up the argument. We also draw out implications. So what I mean by drawing out implications is explaining why this is important to people. This is that so what question. Why should people care? What should people do? This isn't just a chance in the conclusion for you to restate your claims, which maybe you've been told before. This is really a chance for you to hit the hammer home, hit the nail on the head about your argument and explain to people this is something we should be concerned about, here's why, and this is what we should do about it in your conclusion, so that you leave your readers thinking about the action that they're going to take or about why this issue is important. So you'll notice the function of each paragraph, which is highlighted in pink, is a really great start to an outline for a writing project. Whether or not you're going forward with the research paper that we started before spring break, you can use this general format as an outline for most academic essays. Obviously, if you're going with a more creative writing project, your outline probably won't look like this. If you're writing a short story, you're probably not going to have a background paragraph or a counterargument paragraph. But paragraph structure is still important, so you'll still want to think about the 4 F's of paragraph structure, even if you are writing a creative piece. We're going to talk a little bit more in depth about paragraph function in next week's lecture when we talk about the overall structure of our essay as well. So, some questions to ask yourself about paragraph structure. Does each paragraph have a clear topic sentence, which is where we tell our readers what we're talking about? Does each paragraph stick to one main idea? Are there any extraneous or missing sentences in any of your paragraphs? So this is where, once we have a draft of an essay, we want to go back in and carefully reread each sentence and each paragraph fully so that we ensure we have all of the details we need and they're in the order that we want them to be in. So one part of successful paragraphs, as we've seen from the piece paragraph format, is integrating quotations. I wanted to talk about this a little bit more in depth. So there are a few ways that you can integrate quotations. One of the first ways is to introduce the quote with a signal phrase. The first time you refer to a source in your paper, introduce the author and the text that quote is from. So, for example, in Notes of a Native Son, James Baldwin asserts, and then we would have our quotation. I've included here some verbs that you can use to introduce the quotation. We've talked about these verbs before when we talked about the rhetorical praeses format, and these are just a few you can choose from. I wanted to show you that there's a variety of different things that you can say. You don't always have to say the author states or the author claims. There's a lot of different things that you can, verbs that you can use to make your writing come to more life. So that's the first option. The second option is to use a colon to introduce your quote. So at this point, Baldwin became frightened and realized, colon, quotation, I began to realize I was in a country I knew nothing about, in the hands of a people I did not understand at all. End quote, citation, author's last name, page number. So here we see, we know who the author is, and we have a little bit of context about what the quotation is about. The third thing we can do is use a quote to finish a sentence that you begin. He did not know what to expect from the French people because he, quote, had no grasp of the French character, end quote, citation. I would say if you choose to use a quote to finish a sentence you begin, it's a good practice to use the next sentence to explain how that quote fits with your overall argument and your thesis statement. We never want to leave a quote hanging, so we don't tell our readers what the explanation is. That's that piece paragraph formula. So as we see, which I kind of just said, the piece paragraph, this is the IEC, the introduction, evidence, and citation, but don't forget to include your explanation. So, in your weekly check-in this week, consider doing one or more of the following. You don't have to do any of these things, but it may be helpful for you. Draft an outline of your writing project. Send it to me for feedback, either on Moodle or via email. Try your hand at writing a couple of body paragraphs. Send those paragraphs to me for feedback. And this final one, I think, is a really beneficial activity. Reread an essay that you've written for a class this semester or for a class from a different semester, then review your paragraphs. On a document, copy down the first sentence of each paragraph, then write a response that reflects and analyzes on your organization. How well do the sentences reflect the flow of the argument? How clearly can the reader envision the flow of this piece? What can you do to improve your organization for your research paper? So this requires you to go back and look at your old writing and see how you could improve it using some of the elements we discussed in today's lecture. That is a really helpful tool because then when you move forward with writing this newest writing project for our class, you'll be able to put those things into practice. So those are a couple of ways that you could utilize the information from today's lecture in your work before you utilize it in your writing project and then have to reflect on it in your reflection at the end of the semester. I've also included some links here for further reading about paragraph structure. So if you click on any of these links, they'll take you to some additional resources and additional activities that may be beneficial for you. As always, if you're feeling like you want some additional help in the course, here's my contact information. This is also on Moodle. You can still reach out to the Disability Resource Access Coordinator, Sandy Maynor, if you're having problems with anything. And the Learning Assistance and Student Writing Center folks are still available to help you remotely, even though the campuses are closed. So next week, we will be talking a little bit about the entire structure of essays. So we'll be putting these individual paragraphs into place in our bigger essay and thinking about the project as a whole. As always, if you have questions, concerns, if there's anything I can help with, please reach out to me. I'm here to help. I know that we're not connecting on a weekly basis like we're used to, but I'm still here in your success, and your well-being is very important to me. So if there's anything I can do, please let me know. Take care.